Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is my Uncharted 4 crushing difficulty video walkthrough. This is chapter 14, Join Me in Paradise. And just take a few moments to look at this level. It's kind of insane. And when you bear in mind that nothing happens in this particular section, it's just here. You know, they took all this time, all this effort to make this awesome place, which I've just circumvented to come to the path that leads to the next part of the game. But there are dialogue sequences in here you can have with Sam. There are things to pick up, there are things to read. There are so many touches and details, and there's probably more character and more love in this one section of this game than there are in the entirety of other games. And it just really speaks volumes of what Naughty Dog have managed to achieve here, and how games just don't look like this, and won't look like this for a couple of years from now.
Hey Sam, come here. This looks promising.
Because I don't know how they do it, dude. I really don't. It's truly is a wonder. And I keep mentioning it, but I'm so excited to see what they do next, because if they continue to keep challenging themselves and making new IPs, whatever the next game's going to be is just going to be insane. But now that we've moved through the first part of Libertalia, there's going to be a little bit more platforming here as we go down this well, and it's going to kick off a really tricky firefight here. The issue with this firefight is there are a lot of tiers, there are a lot of heights, and there is questionable cover everywhere and a lot of enemies. So the strategy I'm going to show you is in fact going to be a stealth strategy, which you're probably gasping and thinking, Chris, stealth in Uncharted 4, it just doesn't work. But this one does, for me anyway, on this run. But ironically, the fight after this is the area that I stealthed on my first run through Crushing, and I couldn't get it to work again, so I'm going to have to fight on that one, which is a little bit frustrating, but the path I'm going to show you here is a first-time path. I decided to do some creative stuff. Up there is a Baroque, so make sure you pick up the 44, get that ammo. And just be careful, because there are a lot of enemies here moving around. That was the noise of Sam breaking that guy's neck, so he got rid of him for us. But we're going to move to the right-hand flank. That was somebody who thinks they saw something. They're having a quick glance, and then they're going to go back to doing whatever you do when you all wear identical red hats. You'll notice they don't spot Sam, and if you're blaming Sam for you getting spotted, you're misunderstanding how the game works. There were a lot of people on The Last of Us that used to think that Ellie gave away your position, and she didn't. You know, she would only give your position away when you'd given your position away. That was the whole thing. But when I move over here, I wait just a couple seconds there, and I'm going to be moving into this house, and when you climb up this building, you can shimmy from the platform I'm on now, all the way to the left. On this, I think it's this next terrace. Yeah, I think it's this bit. You can actually shimmy on this beam we're on all the way to the left and get to the next area. But I didn't realise how to make this work because I didn't want to go out there because there's a guy and there's a dude across from him with a sniper rifle who's a little itchy on the trigger finger. And I was trying to do like a funky jump here because I didn't realise you could literally just shimmy. So you're going to see me bumble around here for about a minute before I realise I can do it a much more simpler way. And what will happen is, when we get across to that other house, you're going to get a checkpoint. And from that point onwards, we're going to be getting to the firefight that I originally stealthed and then couldn't stealth. And it's kind of interesting because this sequence here, I didn't think you could stealth. I didn't actually try, but I didn't think you could. And I had a really epic firefight here, which can be really fun. I find lower ground is actually better here, because it forces the enemies to drop down and get into a kind of flinch state as they land, and then you can take advantage of them. And then when I got to the next sequence and I found out that it had very limited cover, a really annoying assortment of enemies, and just a setup of geometry that is 100% tiered against the player, I couldn't really find a great strategy of doing it consistently without wasting really good ammunition, because we're carrying two of the best guns in the game, and I would have liked to have saved them for something worthwhile. There is a pretty sharp transition where the checkpoint was, and this is me melee killing a heavy, which if you didn't know you could do that, you can indeed, but you have to take the helmet off. It's a little bit similar to in Uncharted 3, where when you start fighting them, you have to beat them up until the helmet comes off, and then you kill them. And then I get another trophy, which once again, guys, I would normally turn notifications off, but once you do one playthrough on Sony games, you generally don't get any more trophies unless you're really trying to get them. Like, if you look at all my PlayStation walkthroughs, you will not see many trophies popping because it's just the ones at the end. So I found it kind of bizarre. Every single level I play on this game, I seem to get another fucking trophy, which I don't know how I managed to do. But there you go. So a couple of shots here, kicking this up. You'll notice there was a ton of dudes behind us that we stealth past. What's happening with those? Well, the moment we got that checkpoint, it resets them and they all disappear. So you don't have to worry about being shot from behind because the battlefield just updates. It's kind of strange, but it's how it works. I use a couple shots to put down some guys on this part. And we're going to be moving towards the next checkpoint, which is surprisingly close. And earlier in this walkthrough, if you've been with me for the full ride, you'll know that I've expressed quite a lot of disheartenment towards the checkpoints in this game, because I think some of them are very bad. And there are other areas where you get so many checkpoints, it's like, how the fuck do you die? And I don't understand the imbalance in certain areas, the convenience of certain checkpoints as when versed against other ones. It seems really strange what they choose to have, the more arduous set pieces and the less stressful ones. Like, the last boss has 3 checkpoints on it. 3 checkpoints for you to replay that fight. And they could have not had any of those, and it would have been arguably the same fight, because the only hard thing about the final boss is learning his animations. Because if you don't know when he spins which hand he's going to attack with, you don't know which side to block, and if you make a wrong call, it's instant death like 99% of the time. So it can be very tricky, but we're going to swing around to this corner, and this is where the checkpoint / the stealth section begins if you want to try and get to the door without being seen. I'm not going to do that, guys. I'm going to get over here. This is a checkpoint too. Right there. That was a checkpoint. And this is where you can climb on that rock face, go around that corner, and sneak into the next area, and then give Sam a leg up without anybody knowing you're there. But for whatever it was, folks, that first time when I got to that door, everything went beautifully, and then I got spotted. Every other time afterwards, they saw me from a ridiculous range every single time. It was almost like the game was just saying no. So instead, I'm going to swing all the way back to this house to get a little bit more safety from the heavy who rushes you. He's a dick. And then I'm going to counter-snipe people with my Magnum and with my grenade launcher. And unfortunately, they have all the better positions here because it's very difficult to see them. They know exactly where you are because they're the computer. And it makes this way trickier than it needed to be. Additionally, they like to go where that guy is over there. There's a little window where they keep popping their head up, and in a moment there's going to be a shooting gallery of me hitting it. But what I'm doing right now looks like a whole lot of nothing, which it is, but I'm waiting to see where people move. Because the moment you think you can't be seen, there's a dude hitting you with a shotgun. And you see what he's doing? He keeps dipping into the geometry and bouncing up. Look at that shit. I'd never seen that before until I recorded this section. It's good to see that kind of stuff. I like it when a game that has this much polish has the occasional jank. Speaking of jank, the reviews for Homefront have come out. The new Homefront game, Revolution, I think it's called. And earlier on in this walkthrough, I expressed a little bit of dismay because I really don't want to buy that game. And I've been thinking, you know, how do I get this game without paying for it? You know, I could send some strongly worded emails to Deep Silver saying how much of a fan of the original Homefront I really wasn't. You know, I could go to the publisher and be like, I have 1 million subscribers, they call me Markiplier, please give me this. And they're like, Markiplier has 20 million subscribers, you imposter, get out of my face. But then I was thinking, I could trade in some games, like, I hate Star Fox, you know, I haven't touched it since the day it came out when I recorded all the levels, and I really don't want to touch it ever again because it just reminds me of how much more I enjoyed Lilac Wars 20 years ago, or whenever it was. I really don't care too much for Quantum Break at the moment, you know. I've done everything in that game and I have no impulse to play it again, so I could trade that in. Hell, I could even trade in Uncharted 4 because it's super new and I'm probably never going to play it again. And if I ever get a craving to play it, I could always just rebuy it when it's super cheap in a few years. So I have the ability to trade in a bunch of better games to get this bag of shit game. And then the reviews are all coming out and it's like 5 out of 10, 4 out of 10, this game is broken, this game is buggy, it is a mess, it's this, it's that, and it pretty much, it's getting the kind of reviews I thought it looked like when I first saw it. Oh, by the way, right now, I'm using the deep grass to wait for these two guys to come forward, because one of them is a heavy. And the heavies in this game are the dudes who are going to kill you the most. Oh, and it has to be said, folks, grenade throwing in this game is shit compared to Uncharted 3. In Uncharted 3, you can do some ridiculous grenade throws, and you can always kind of tell where your aimer is. And you might be wondering, well, how do you know this? I went back to Uncharted 3 last night and started playing it, and I had a ton of fun. It's kind of hilarious. Like, I think the shooting in Uncharted 3 is an interesting direction to take the series, because it's not as loose as it was in 2, but it's still kind of janky in its own way. And there are a lot of features that this game has introduced, which I think are great improvements, like the hit markers and certain other aspects of combat, which makes it just flow a little bit better. But in that time, I played from Chapter 12, Abducted, on Crushing, all the way up to Chapter 16. And 2 of those chapters are some of the toughest ones in that game, I remember, when I recorded my walkthrough for that game. And I didn't have too much trouble at all with it. And I had a lot of fun. Like, every single part of that was fun. I had more fun in that 2-hour stint playing those levels than I did in the entire time I've played Uncharted 4. Which just goes to show how strongly I am when it comes to really not enjoying this game as much as I should. And I'm in kind of like a post-Uncharted 4 funk. It's hilarious. I feel like those sad bastards who watched Avatar and then couldn't go back to their normal lives of not being a giant blue dog, and they got all sad. I feel like that, because I feel like the game is awesome in a lot of ways, and I think it's a technical achievement in a lot of ways, and the combat in its essence of everything is not in any way bad. It's good. It's just I don't enjoy it, and I don't find any fun in it, and that makes me sad. And I've been, as I mentioned, I've been in this kind of weird funk. And when I popped on Uncharted 3 and I went into that Abducted level where you have to fight, you know, when you're in the chair, and I was a little bit hesitant, because I remember the fighting in that game on Crushing quite difficult, because I didn't really know too much to do. But the fighting in this game almost prepared me for the fighting in that game, so I went into that checkpoint and absolutely kicked ass, didn't even die on that massive brawl. And you know, then we got to the shooting section in that moment where you don't have any weapons, and then there's that massive place with all the turrets, and that's another really tricky zone where a lot of spawns, a lot of crazy stuff happening. And I was watching an anime by the name of Blade of the Immortal on YouTube, of all places, while I was doing it, and I was just playing, just, you know, doing the whole third-person shooter gameplay, having some fun, kicking ass, watching this anime, and I ended up doing that sequence, and I only died twice to that wonky spawn when you jump towards the ladder and those people on the balcony suddenly turn up. One of them RPG'd me when I was on the other side of cover, and it killed me, because the RPGs in Uncharted 3 are way more severe than they are in this game. In this game, they're almost fair. Like, they're straight up ridiculously fair. But in the third game, they will kill you if they hit the opposite side of the cover that you're in, if it's not like a certain depth, maybe. I'm not too sure how it works. Similar to this, it took me ages to realise that I had to drop down and shimmy along here so I could get to where that ladder was, because I was trying to get to an angle to jump to it. But there is a lot of organic moments of cover in this game and climbing, so it's not the most obvious path, and I like that, because it makes it so that you have to use your brain a little bit more, and you have to think about what you're doing a little bit more. And there was a moment on Uncharted 3 where I died more than any of the combat. I died about 4 times because I couldn't figure out where to go. And it was the bit where it starts flooding the cruise liner thing, and you get squashed by that, whatever it is, it's like an electrical panel. And then when you get up, all it wants you to do is to swim into the darkest corner of the room, and there's a vent to pull off. But I couldn't see it, and I kept trying to swim in other places, and the camera wouldn't move, and I kept suffocating. And I thought it was just hilarious that I did some of the tough, like the ballroom areas with the shotgun guys and the balcony with all the gunners, you know, in like the casino bit. Did that bit effortlessly. I did all these sections that I remember being very tricky and telling you in my walkthrough that these were tough as shit. And I did them rather comfortably. And then I died like 4 times to drowning on a sequence where there's no gameplay really. It's just you follow a set path. So I thought that was kind of hilarious. But if you're wondering what I'm doing with that, is I'm trying to unlock Brutal. And I really think Brutal should be unlocked from the beginning. And if it isn't, I think the Konami code should unlock it, because I don't want to play Crushing. I'm bored with Crushing on that game. And I don't know how this has happened, but I assume it's because of Brutal from Uncharted 2. Once you go Brutal, you can't go back, because the difficulty is so severe when compared that Crushing feels almost leisurely. There was one point where I was like, Jesus, I died fast. And that was, you know, when you're climbing the wall on Abducted, and you're clinging on those panels, and you're doing like a vertical shooting section? The one bit where a guy with a Raffica sprayed me down in the space of a second, it felt like Brutal. He just, and I was dead. I didn't have a chance to fire a second burst, he just murked me. And at that point, I was like, wow, that is a fast death. That is a difficult death right there. And it's not a tough section, it's just, you cannot get greedy in that sequence. And on Brutal, that bit's probably going to be even worse. But I'm really curious to see the balance of some of those areas, because when you play it on Crushing and you know Brutal exists, you're thinking all the time, that would have put me to one shot, that would have killed me, and stuff like that. So you're analysing how much you get hit, and for the most, I didn't get hit that much. But this is not a game that you can no damage, so you get hit every so often. And it was really interesting, and it's really exciting too. And it completely pulled me out of the funk, because I was playing an Uncharted game, and I feel like I should be playing an Uncharted game, seeing as how the new one came out. And I was having a ton of fun, so I'm going to probably get back to that once I've finished these commentaries. But thank you very much for watching, and you take care now.